Hello, my name is 환산스님 and this is Sun Meditation in English. For today's program, before we get to the guided meditation, I would like to address a concern that has been raised by one of our viewers who saw one of the videos of this program on our YouTube channel. And this viewer comments that the traditional seated meditation posture that we hold when we're on the meditation mat is too difficult for most modern people. The comment is that it would be almost impossible to learn, and so the viewer expressed a certain level of frustration and discouragement. So I would like to take a moment to address that concern and say that on this program in the past, I have emphasized that almost anyone, if they put in the time and energy to practice this, eventually they'll be able to assume that position. But I do believe that the concern that this viewer raised is legitimate because modern people are very, very busy. And the fact is that, so I would like to take this opportunity first to thank the viewer for raising this concern. And second, to say again that it's perfectly fine to meditate in a chair. And on this program, I have explained how to meditate in a chair, and I would like to, again, take this opportunity to review the method for meditating in a chair. So once again, you want to pick a chair that's very firm and stable. You don't want wheels on the bottom of the chair like the kind of chairs that you see in some offices. And the third requirement is that the height of the chair should be so that when you sit in it and lay your feet flat on the floor, your knees are at a right angle and your ankles are more or less at a right angle. You don't want the chair so high that your feet feel like they're about to dangle, nor do you want the chair so low that either you have to tuck your feet in like this or kick them out to sit properly. And the second thing, after you've chosen the right chair, is to sit straight up in the chair as I am now, and you don't want to lean back into the back of the chair. You want your spine freestanding and erect and as extended as possible. Now, when we sit like this, the line from the crown of our head to our tailbone is exactly the same as when we're seated in the traditional meditation posture that we use on the meditation mat. So we don't have to feel like we're sacrificing anything by choosing to sit in a chair. Once we're sitting like this, then from here on in, everything else is the same. Take your right hand, place the edge of it against your abdomen. Take your left hand, place it on top of your right hand. Let your thumb tips meet each other to form an elegant rainbow arc. Tuck in your chin slightly so that the crown of your head rises to the ceiling and maximizes the length of your spine. From here, raise your shoulder up to your ears, roll back, and drop just to release the tension in your shoulders. With a normal gaze, just look forward. And because your chin is tucked in, your gaze should naturally fall on the floor about 3 meters or 10 feet in front of you. And as you look forward, just don't stare at any specific object or point. And finally, you want the tip of your tongue to be placed lightly against the roof of your mouth, just behind your upper row of teeth. So this is meditation posture in a chair. And for today's program and in the future, I will hold this position for the first half of the program. From here, as usual, we enter into preparation breathing. And today I would like to note once again that preparation breathing is not simply a good way to relax our minds and bodies and segue into formal meditation. We do that on this program, but the truth is preparation breathing is an extremely effective method for dealing with very strong emotions, very intense states of distress. So in preparation breathing for dealing with a distressful emotion, the only thing that's different than when we use it to prepare for meditation is that we're going to do it many, many times, as long as it takes for the emotion to settle down. And the second thing is we're going to go a little slower than usual, and we're going to be a little calmer than usual. The problem is you don't want to be breathing too fast during preparation breathing because there's a danger of hyperventilating. So for today, we'll try to practice preparation breathing for dealing with an unpleasant emotion. Okay? So, once again in preparation breathing, we inhale through the nose completely fill our chest, hold, and then we will release, exhale through the mouth and completely empty our chest. And we're going to go a little slower than usual, and we'll try it for somewhere between 5 and 10 times, okay? So, and as we do this, please try to observe the effect it has on your mind, your state of mind, and your bodies, okay? Go nice and slow. Inhale, hold, and then exhale. As we exhale, imagine that all the stress in your body is leaving with the out-breath. Once again, inhale, hold, and then exhale. Observe the release of tension in our bodies. As we go calmer and calmer, our breath will naturally become longer. Once again, inhale, hold, and then exhale. Once our emotions have calmed down, then we can go into the abdominal breathing, which is the main breathing form for our meditation. So why don't we begin abdominal breathing together? So from now on, we breathe through the nose, and when we inhale, we push out our lower belly, we pause for 2 to 3 seconds, and then we exhale through our nose and pull in our lower belly for a slightly longer time, longer than the in-breath, okay? So why don't we bring in abdominal breathing? So inhale, hold, and then exhale. And from here we engage our hwadu, imoko. And why don't we do this out loud? So inhale, hold, and then together, imoko. Imoko. Y-I-M-W-O-T-G-O. It means, what is this? What is this that directs my body? When I think of something, what is this that generates the thought? When I have an emotion, what is it that feels the emotion? When someone calls my name, what is it within me that responds instantly to the sound of my own name? That's what we're asking ourselves in the most urgent and sincere way possible. Once again, inhale, hold, and then together, imoko. So once again, I will ask our studio audience members and our viewers to continue maintaining this posture, continue engaging the abdominal breathing, and continue holding the hwadu, that's what we called, thinking about imoko in your mind throughout the course of this program. Now, with regard to the hwadu imoko, as we do this, I would like to provide some supplemental explanation so that we can get a deeper and deeper understanding and appreciation of how to do it and how it works and the kinds of benefits that this form of meditation provides. Recently, actually the last time that I saw my teacher, Sun Master Songdam, he surprised me by suddenly quoting something in English. And I believe what he quoted is actually a phrase from an old high school physics textbook. But I will share with you what he taught us. He said, it is physically impossible for two objects to exist in the same place at the same time. Now, I don't think he was trying to teach us about classical physics. I think he was trying to make a point about the nature of meditation, the nature of our consciousness, most specifically the nature of the way our attention, when we pay attention to something, how that works. And what I think he means is this, that we can focus our attention on only one thing in any given moment. We cannot focus our attention on two things. Our mind can only occupy one place at one time. Now, you may object and think, well, no, I multitask all the time. I do several things. I'm on the phone, I'm on the computer, I'm looking at my cell phone, I'm a multitasker. And the human mind can do quite many different things at the same time. But I would like to argue here that in any given split second, we're actually only focusing on one thing. On an involuntary, non-conscious level, our nervous system may be doing all sorts of things, but in our conscious awareness, in our conscious attention, in any given tiny fraction of a moment, we are only thinking of one thing or paying attention to only one thing. And the way multitasking works is the way a juggler juggles 5 or 6 balls at a time. At any given moment, the juggler's hand is only touching one ball. In the same way, when we're multitasking, we are simply moving our attention from one object of concern to another, keeping those things in play, just as a juggler keeps the balls in the air, only touching one ball at a time. So I think that this principle holds. And what's relevant to us, this isn't just an academic observation. What's relevant to us is this. The moment we place our attention on the hwadu, we have instantly disengaged it from whatever our attention was on before. That if our mind is on something unpleasant, if there's a thought or emotion troubling us, we don't have to wrestle with it. We don't have to figure out a way to disengage. We just breathe and do imoko, and instantly, because of the nature of our attention, the way the mechanism works, instantly we have disengaged from that emotion. So on this program, I've mentioned this before. People use the phrase, let it go, let go. You don't have to let go. Holding the hwadu is letting go. It is the act. It is the application of letting go. You don't even have to think the thought, letting go. So this is how the hwadu can work for us. And we are always engaged in trying to bring our attention back to the hwadu over and over again, which immediately frees us from whatever internal suffering is going on. So this is sort of the psychological and maybe even biological principle that this meditation is based on. And we can take heart in that and see how this meditation will help us deal with our suffering, which is the topic for today's contemplation and meditation. Today's topic is the green-eyed monster, jealousy. Now, I think many people may think, hearing of this topic, what would a Buddhist monk know about jealousy? Supposedly, not supposedly, we actually have, renounced material possessions, taken leave of conventional society, and we're in quest for spiritual enlightenment with our attention turned inwardly to the source of our consciousness, which is what we're trying to get enlightened to. What would we know about jealousy? And so to address that, I would actually like to let everyone in on a little secret in Korean Buddhism. There's a saying about us Buddhist monks that goes like this. A Buddhist monk or snim is the very incarnation, the very embodiment of jealousy. Now, why would that be? On a human level, it is true that we have attempted to renounce our conventional secular goals. But at the same time, very, very few of us are enlightened. We are in transit, moving from one state of mind, hopefully trying to get to another level of consciousness. And in the meantime, we're still struggling on our path. And for the majority of us sinims, the years pass, we grow older, and there are no visible signs of accomplishment. We don't get wealthier, we don't get promoted, we're exactly where we are. And being human, as we grow older, we too feel vulnerable. We too worry about the kind of concern and respect we may receive from both our peers and from the people who support us. So we are all too human as well. And we must struggle with jealousy as well. The only difference is that we have been taught a traditional and ancient system of meditation to help us deal with these very troubling and often destructive emotions. So in this way, I would say that being a sinim is most helpful for dealing, for experiencing jealousy or having to deal with it, especially in the case of someone like myself, who belongs to a community organized around a very authoritative spiritual leader. When you have committed and devoted your life to a single teacher, you're very concerned about how he or she may think of you. And if he or she seems to have a favorite pupil or disciple other than you, you will react emotionally. And so we must deal with this. All of us, whether we like it or not, are forced to live with each other and influence one another, and we're influenced when we move from one another or toward one another. So, Apparently, there is no agreed upon scientific definition for jealousy. People describe it in many different ways, and some of the most common ways of describing it are a feeling of loss, or suspicion or anger about a perceived betrayal, or loss of self-esteem and sadness about a perceived loss, uncertainty and loneliness, the feeling that you're losing someone to somebody else, and finally mistrust. Those are sort of the most common 6 experiences of jealousy that have been researched upon. And the reason why there's no agreed upon scientific definition of jealousy is because it's so complex. It covers such a complex range of thinking patterns, emotions, and behaviors that it's really hard to nail it down. And researchers commonly name 6 different factors or conditions that can influence how jealousy is experienced and expressed. And just quickly, the 6 are first sociobiological. Depending on whether you're a man or a woman, your genetic structure, your psychology, you will react differently. And then the kind of socialization that you've been through will also affect how you respond at the biochemical and neurological level. After that, there's the factor of culture and history. Depending on what culture you're from, when and where you live, that will also help to shape what you are allowed and not allowed to express and how you deal with these kind of emotions. The third factor is personality. Of course, depending on who you are, your reaction will be different. The fourth factor is relational. Depending on the nature of the relationship that you have with the object of jealousy, again, that will be different. And then they name the 5th factor, situational factor, which basically means what happened to spark jealousy, to get jealousy in motion. So how did the environment or things that happened in the environment affect you or your relationship? And finally, they call the last factor strategic, which apparently refers to how aware you are of the existence of all these conditions that may influence how you experience jealousy and how you respond to it. So it is very, very complicated. And the question, of course, on this program that we always ask is how can Sun Buddhist teachings and practices help us to cope with the green-eyed monster, with this very painful and destructive emotion or behavior or whatever you want to call it. Now, I would like to suggest for today's program that actually using meditation to deal with jealousy is quite different than trying to use it on other kinds of thoughts and emotions. And the reason why is this. If you're using meditation to deal with sadness or anger or a troubling thought, you're using meditation to deal with the content of consciousness, okay? So the object of your attention. So that's the way we've practiced meditation together on this program. But I want to argue or suggest here that with jealousy, I think it's something quite different. And I want to suggest that jealousy is more than just the content of our consciousness. It's more than just what we're thinking or feeling. I would like to argue that it is a global state of consciousness, a mode of consciousness. And I would like to suggest, and I'm not trying to say that there's a biological basis for this, but I think it's a helpful way, metaphorically, to think of jealousy in order to get our heads around it when we meditate. So, this idea that jealousy is a global state of consciousness, and I would like to elaborate on that by saying that it's a mode of consciousness of threat assessment, because jealousy is defined, roughly defined, as the feeling of being threatened that you're about to lose something, in this case, a person or a relationship. So when you feel that threat, I believe that we enter into a different mode of consciousness, dealing with it. And I jokingly refer to it as our personal DEFCON 1. Now, DEFCON 1, for those of you who don't know, is the state of military preparedness that the U.S. Armed Forces attains when they believe that nuclear war is imminent. It is the highest state of alarm. And I believe that we also enter a similar state of alarm because when we lose a relationship, we lose we sustain much more damage than on the emotional level. If you are a sibling, if you are a child, and your parent loves one of your siblings more than you, that will affect how you're raised. It may affect even how much you're educated and fed. It will have real life consequences on you. Likewise, if your teacher in an educational setting prefers one pupil over you, you may not get the attention and the educational opportunities that you would have. In a work environment, it's even worse. If your boss favors someone else, then your chances at promotion, your chances at advancement have been hindered. So it's only natural that when a relationship is threatened, that we feel that threat at a very profound level. Now, I want to argue that there is a logic to the threat assessment mode, the DEFCON mode, the DEFCON 1 mode. A lot of times people say when someone is jealous, oh, you're just being jealous, you're being so immature, you're being so irrational. And I would like to argue, no, that there's actually a logic, a very convincing logic that rules and guides the threat assessment mode. And I would like to explain that through a simple metaphor. Let's say that you're walking in the forest at night, and on the path in front of you, you see this thing, and you're not sure whether it's a rope or a snake. Okay, now this is a classic metaphor in Buddhism, but I want to take this in a different direction. So you're looking at this. So now you're feeling a little threatened, and you go into threat assessment mode. Under the logic of threat assessment, it's better to think of it as a snake, even if it isn't a snake. If you think of it as a snake and you walk around it, at the end you're still alive. All right? Even if it was a rope, you have sustained no damage. On the other hand, if you take a trusting attitude, a non-threatened attitude, and decide, well, I think it's a rope, and walk right past, you may get bitten and you may literally lose everything. So under the logic of threat assessment, to assume things are threatening is the reasonable thing to do when you want to survive. And if you feel that the loss of a relationship affects your well-being or your survival, then it's only natural that we go into a state of consciousness that reviews things as a threat and wants to protect itself. Now, the consequences of that threat assessment mode, I believe we are all familiar with. Our perceptual mode will change. I'm not talking about what we perceive, but how we perceive. We will immediately look for things that are threatening. Not only threatening now, but are potential threats as well. So our whole way of perceiving and experiencing reality has changed. This is why people in the throes of jealousy look so different than those who are not. The other thing is that our thinking pattern will change too. We will become very paranoid by normal standards. It is to our advantage if we feel we are in conflict to think that the other one may be trying to harm me. Because at the end of the day, again, even if they're not trying to harm me, I survived the day. Whereas if I just trust someone who I can't trust, I may really get hurt. So there is a kind of logic that rules it, but the problem, like the fight or flight response, is that it shouldn't go that long. The fight or flight response in modern society, this is well documented. If you hold on to that state of mind and body for too long, it turns into what we commonly think of as stress, and it has an incredibly destructive effect on our health. Likewise, our personal DEFCON 1, if you take that for too long, then I believe it will have very, very destructive effects on our health, on our well-being, and ultimately on our network of relationships. So once again then, the question is, can meditation help us to deal with the green-eyed monster, the state of personal DEFCON 1? Why don't we take a break, and when we get back, we'll try to answer that question. And in the second half of this program, I will once again assume the traditional seated meditation posture. And we're back again. Once again, the question is, how can we use sun meditation to cope with and perhaps overcome the green-eyed monster, jealousy, our personal state of DEFCON 1, when we feel deeply threatened by the potential loss of someone who is very, very important to us? I would like to list a set of recommendations that I personally have tried to apply over the years when the green-eyed monster appeared in my own life, and which I have observed also among my peers, of my fellow Buddhist monastics. So the first suggestion that I would like to make is simply admit that you're jealous. So often, for some reason, in cultures across the world, it's considered deeply shameful or embarrassing to feel jealous about something. So especially in contemporary Western culture, it's very common to see people say, well, you're just being jealous. And the other person replies very defensively, no, I'm not. But I think for whatever reason, admitting to being in a state of jealousy somehow affects our pride, our vanity, our ego. So I've actually offered the metaphor of DEFCON 1. And I'm not sure if there's actually a scientific basis for this, but it helps to think of it on a metaphorical level. Because if you think of it that way, then you can just think that my button has been pushed. And I have been placed into this alternate mode of behaving and using my consciousness. And I don't know what caused the button to be pushed, but that's all that has happened. A trigger has been pulled. You know, this doesn't have to be taken on the level of character judgment, of judging myself as a person. Now, it's true that some people are more prone to jealousy than others. But when you're actually in the throes of jealousy, the most urgent thing is to first try to get yourself out of it. And then afterward, you can worry about whether this is some kind of persistent problem for you. And for that, I think it's best to consult the professionals, psychiatrists and psychotherapists. But in a situation where you're actually caught right in the grip of jealousy, I think it's best to think that, oh, my button has been pushed. I'm in DEFCON 1. Just admit it. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's only natural to fear and resent the prospect of losing someone who is deeply meaningful and important to you. So we admit that to ourselves, and that leads us to the second suggestion that I would like to make. Because when you admit that you are in DEFCON 1, you are acknowledging that your entire system of perceiving and thinking about the world has been altered. And so the second piece of advice or suggestion that I would like to share is double check all of our thoughts and perceptions, all of the conclusions and interpretations that we come to. Perceptually, we are seeking out, we are looking for threats, both real and potential. In our thinking pattern, we are in a state of persistent suspicion. We are assuming that other people don't have our interest in mind, that we must protect ourselves against others. In other words, we are in a very, very paranoid state of mind, much like nations get into when they go to war with one another. So we need to double check. And this is where meditation becomes very, very helpful. Because in order to attain the objectivity to double check our thoughts and perceptions, meditation is enormously healthy. We use the posture, the breathing, and the hwadu imoko to constantly bring ourselves back to center, bring ourselves to a place of clarity and rootedness and objectivity. And that will help us double check. Now, the third suggestion that I would like to make, and I have found this extremely helpful living in the kind of community setting that I do, is because we are in personal DEFCON 1, because we are perceptual mode and thinking are now necessarily paranoid, it is very good to confer with a third-party impartial observer, to get feedback from someone who has a different perspective on things. We need to be getting information from the world. Otherwise, we're only going to be stuck in our paranoid frame of mind. So I think that is very important, and that's why it's so important to first admit that we're jealous. That way we can open dialogue with someone else. And once again, the meditation is helpful in dealing with the kind of awkwardness or embarrassment or insecurity that we may feel in revealing our feelings, even to someone very trusted. And the fourth is use the preparation breathing. At the beginning of this program, we practiced it for an extended period, and that is exactly what we should do when we feel ourselves really feeling the most intense emotions that the state of jealousy has to offer. The levels of resentment, anxiety, insecurity are very, very high, and we as beginning meditators may feel overwhelmed. It may be hard to attain the posture when our bodies are stiff with anger or tension or whatever. It may be hard to engage the breathing when our chest is filled with emotional pain or paralyzed. And it may feel all but impossible to think imoko when our minds are playing out the worst kind of thoughts and emotions, are playing out worst case scenarios and replaying film clips of the worst things that have happened in this relationship with this other person. So in that kind of highly distressful situation, preparation breathing is enormously helpful because it is so simple, because it requires zero expertise. You just have to know how to do it. And as we've practiced today, you'll note that the longer you do it, the more you repeat it, your breathing gets longer, your body releases its tension, and your mind becomes clearer, more relaxed, your emotions dissipate. I will not claim that for beginning meditators, just doing preparation breathing will immediately remove all of those painful emotions, but it will definitely improve your situation. It'll definitely put you in a better place and help you not to do things that you'll later regret. So that's preparation breathing I would really, really like to emphasize on today's program. And for the fifth suggestion, I would, and this is the most obvious one, I would like to suggest that when we're feeling jealous, that we meditate, and we meditate as much as we possibly can. Once again, if this idea has any validity, that jealousy is a state of DEFCON 1, that we are profoundly threatened, we're feeling profoundly threatened, then we are in an extreme state of mind and body, and we need to be meditating as much as we possibly can to bring the temperature down. Now, when I say meditate as much as possible, absolutely it means try to do formal seated meditation, whether on a mat or in a chair, as much as possible. So if you're doing like 10 minutes a day, then, amp up the time. Go to 20 minutes a day, twice a day. But you really want to be doing this as often as you can to tone yourself back down again. And so on one level, it is increasing your seated meditation time. The second level is on the moment-to-moment basis, on a minute-minute progression of our lives through any day. You want to be actually using the breathing and the imoko hadu as much as you possibly can. Now, to explain the value of that, I would like to actually share with you an anecdote about this experience I had with one of my fellow Buddhist monks. He's actually an elder monk whom I knew when I was living in the meditation hall. And all of us respected him very much. He was quite well respected and admired for his diligence and commitment to meditative practice, and also for the way he carried himself and the way he treated his fellow monks, both above him and below him, and also the lay people who come to our monastery. So we all admired him. But he had a very interesting hobby or characteristic, and that was that he liked to watch boxing. And we found this to be very, very curious because, it seems, on the surface that most people think of boxing as an exceptionally brutal and violent sport, completely at odds with what we as Buddhist monastics are trying to achieve. So we were very, very curious about this because he would watch all the famous or popular matches. And so finally we mustered up the courage to go and ask him, why do you like boxing so much? His reply was very interesting. He said, because I learn what kind of attitude I need to take in my meditation. He said, you have to be like a boxer. So I thought about that quite a bit. In a boxing situation, the boxer is in an enclosed place with an opponent who's going to try to hit him as hard as he can, as often as he can. And so the boxer has to do everything possible to defend himself and respond in kind, because the purpose of your opponent is to knock you out, is to put you on the ground. And so in meditation, the reason why this metaphor is helpful is because especially when we're in a state of jealousy, we too are experiencing a shower of blows that are occurring at the level of thought and emotion. When you're in a state of paranoid jealousy, you are being subjected to an unceasing rain of negative thoughts, emotions, images, sensations. And the logic of this elderly monastic big brother of mine is that you must reply in kind. Otherwise, you're just not going to make it. And the way to reply in kind is not through violence, but to be extremely diligent in our practice of meditation, to bring our practice of meditation to the moment-by-moment level. So each time a disturbing thought, emotion, or sensation arises, we meet it, blow for blow, with a hwadu. We meet it with a breath. We meet it with the thought of imoko. This kind of intense diligence is what is required to use meditation to deal with the kinds of shocks that actual living often provides us. And this is the way we need to practice when the green-eyed monster appears. And in Korean Buddhism, this concept of using meditation not in just a peaceful, friendly, natural way, but in this very intense, proactive way is illustrated in the term that Korean Buddhists use for intensive meditation. It's called ferocious meditation. In Korean, 용맹정진. You're not just being calm and graceful. You are getting in there and you are focusing on your internal mental and physical events with great intensity and concentration, bringing your attention to bear upon each moment as it passes, and using your breathing, your posture, and especially your hwadu to deal with it, to escape from and overcome the suffering that these split-second but incredibly invasive negative mind states produce in us. So when I say meditate as you've never meditated before, I'm talking about ferocious meditation. And when I say ferocious meditation, yes, it means increase your sitting meditation time as much as possible, but bring the practice of meditation into your daily life, into your daily moment-by-moment experience of life. And it's if we can do that, then issues like jealousy become much, much more manageable. And issues like jealousy bring us to the height of our meditation ability. They train us to become much, much better meditators. And all of these 5 suggestions, and I'll review them right now. The first is admit you're jealous. The second is double check your thoughts and perceptions. The third is dialogue with a friend and get feedback. The fourth is use preparation breathing for experiences of intense emotional distress. 5 is ferocious meditation. Meditate like you've never meditated before. We do all those 5 things so that we can get to the 6th one. And the 6th one is this. We must determine whether the threat to our valued relationship is real or imagined. Now, it's not a matter of, oh, I'm sure it's nothing, or the opposite, there's definitely something going on. It's not something like that. We need to get to a point where the conclusion is so convincing that our hearts, our minds, and our bodies believe it. It has to be real, it has to be honest, it has to be very, very thorough. Otherwise, some part of our hearts just won't believe it. Now, if we can do that, and we discover that the threat is imagined, that it's really not as bad as I thought it was, then that alone should take us out of DEFCON 1. That alone should unpush the button. And from then on, we can just use the meditation and confer with our peers and friends and confidants and just get back to life as normal. But the truth is that the other thing may be true. The threat may be real. Maybe there's something really happening, there's some shift in your relationship. Now, in that situation, I would just like to simply recommend that whatever we choose to do, we choose to do it in the mind frame of wisdom and compassion. The mind frame of wisdom for situations like this is use meditation to get to a place of clarity and insight and consider very carefully the long-term consequences of any decision that you may make. You want to make the choice that will minimize suffering both for yourself and for those involved in this. And the mind frame of compassion I would like to suggest is this. Whatever you decide to do, Try as hard as you can to avoid unnecessary harm or pain, both for yourself and for others. It's the cleanest way to solve a problem. It's the most practical way. It's the most decent way. Okay? This is not simply a matter of religion. So that is what I would like to suggest in terms of dealing with the green-eyed monster. For us beginning meditators, and frankly, even for the most seasoned meditators, it's just not easy when we have to deal with jealousy, when we have to deal with the DEFCON 1 situation. But I have found, and my peers have found, that when we bring meditation into it, it is very, very helpful. Now, in conclusion, I would like to remind all of you again of the principle that I shared with you at the beginning of this program. It is physically impossible for two objects to occupy the same place at the same time. It is physically impossible for our attention to occupy two places at the same time. What this means in the context of jealousy is this: at any given moment, we have a very simple choice to make. We can make the target of our attention our random thoughts and emotions. And when we make that choice, we are choosing to live in the hell of jealousy. Or we can choose to redirect our attention to our hwadu. And when we do that, we are making the choice to live in a state of clarity and stability and calmness. The important thing to remember here is that we need to make this choice over and over and over again throughout the day, throughout all the events of our lives. And that is what, as far as I understand it, meditation is all about. It's not about stepping away from life. It's a way of engaging life. That's it for today. Thank you very much. And I will once again close with the traditional Buddhist greeting. May we all attain the Buddha. And with 3 strikes of the chukpi, we will enter our closing session of meditation.
Thank you.